night is heavy with stillness, like silk hanging from an unmoving branch. You stand inside the courtyard of the inner palace, tucked in a quiet corner of the forbidden city. Everything is draped in shadow and hush, as if the whole world has collectively agreed to whisper. Even the moon looks like it's tiptoeing tonight. A faint breeze slips through the carved wooden lattice beside you. It carries the scent of wet bamboo, aged stone, and some kind of flower that's been politely dying since yesterday. If someone told you this was the scent of time itself, you'd believe them. This is China during the Ming Dynasty, in the early 1500s, a time when the emperor was considered heaven's favorite child. And his crickets? Well, they had their own palace gardens. You, as fate would have it, have been appointed caretaker of those crickets. Not the emperor's warhorse, not his concubines, not his silk imports. No, just the bugs. And somehow, it's still one of the most peaceful jobs in the entire Forbidden City. You'll be fine. You probably won't make it through this day, but not because it's difficult, just extremely sleepy. Before we get too far along, if you're enjoying this slow march through sleepy dynasties, feel free to tap the like button. Gently, of course. Maybe even subscribe so you can join us for future naps in different centuries. And if you're still awake, drop a comment with your location and the time you're listening. There's something oddly cozy about seeing where and when everyone else is drifting off. Now, let's ease into tonight's journey. The palace path beneath your feet is worn smooth by the centuries, every stone polished by slippered feet and the occasional brush of a ceremonial robe. You walk softly beneath hanging lanterns that flicker more for ambiance than usefulness. The glow they give off is just enough to see your breath curl like incense into the air. You pass a row of tall, whisper-thin trees. Scholars believe they were planted here to mimic the forests of the emperor's boyhood. Or, possibly, because someone lost a bet with a landscape designer. Historians still debate whether the placement was meant for symbolism or shade. And then, there it is, the cricket garden. It's not grand, not in the way you might expect from something belonging to the emperor. There are no dragons carved in gold or peacocks perched on marble, just a modest plot of earth enclosed by smooth bamboo fencing, a few flat stones for walking, and dozens upon dozens of small, elegant ceramic jars resting in neat rows like little sleeping tents. Each jar contains one very important cricket. Now, before you assume this is just a royal eccentricity, some ancient version of a petting zoo for bugs, it's worth noting that cricket culture had been flourishing in China for centuries before this emperor came along. During the Tang dynasty, around the 8th century, people began keeping crickets for their songs. Their high-pitched chirping was believed to chase away loneliness. Some thought it even prolonged life, though notably not the crickets. By the Song dynasty, the hobby had evolved into an art form. Special containers were crafted to enhance the sound. Crickets were judged for tone, pitch, and even personality. And because humans can't help themselves, eventually they started making the crickets fight. You approach one of the jars and lift the lid carefully. Inside, a small cricket stretches its legs like an athlete warming up. Its antennae twitch, either in preparation for song, or more likely, disapproval of your breath. This one's called plum wine. Someone carved his name in tiny characters on the side of the pot. He's a bit of a diva, but his trill is unmatched, clear and steady, with just a hint of smugness. The emperor likes to keep plum wine near his sleeping quarters. It's said he finds the sound more reassuring than a court advisor. You place a slice of boiled gourd inside the jar. It's a delicacy. Crickets, it turns out, are extremely picky. Some prefer melon. Others like steamed rice. A few demand cricket-specific delicacies that even palace chefs grumble about. The sun has not yet risen, but already the crickets are beginning to stir. Their song starts as a whisper, then grows, layer upon layer, until the whole garden hums like a sleepy orchestra tuning up in slow motion. You listen with your eyes half closed. There's something oddly hypnotic about it. This world where bugs are treated like nobles, and silence is optional but never required. A servant walks by with a tray of freshly oiled cricket cages, some carved from sandalwood, others inlaid with jade. These are travel homes, used when the emperor takes his favorite crickets with him on trips. Yes, even on royal tours, there's room in the caravan for cricket accommodations. You once heard someone say they rode in more comfort than half the concubines. No one denied it. You pause beside another jar. The lid is decorated with a painting of a gourd vine twisting up into the clouds. Inside, a cricket named Quiet Thunder peers out, entirely living up to his name. He hasn't sung in 3 days. The head eunuch believes it's performance anxiety. You suspect he's just tired of all the attention. As the sky begins to shift from indigo to soft gray, you lean against a pillar. In this corner of the forbidden city, time feels like it's exhaled all its urgency. The chirping wraps around you, not demanding, not urgent, just there. The emperor is still asleep, his dreams perhaps scored by the chirping symphony curated for his ears alone. You think briefly about how odd it is, this grand empire run by a man who finds comfort in the smallest of sounds. And then you sit, robe tucked beneath you, hands folded quietly, and listen. The jars continue to vibrate with life. And you're doing just fine. Just try not to nod off before checking on plum wine again. He's been known to stop singing when he gets jealous. Morning unfurls itself slowly across the palace, like a silk scroll revealing a watercolor sky. Pale light creeps through latticed windows, painting long stripes across the courtyard floor. Somewhere in the distance, a rooster makes a half-hearted attempt at a crow, as if even it knows there's no rush. This is the forbidden city, after all. Things happen when they happen. You are still sitting beside the cricket garden, your legs tingling slightly from having fallen asleep cross-legged. A noble pose, sure, but apparently not great for circulation. You stretch slowly, cautiously, like you're worried you'll wake the insects. Most of them are still nestled inside their pots, tiny legs tucked up, antennae twitching only slightly. Plum Wine is awake, though. Of course he is. The Emperor's favorite cricket wouldn't dare sleep in. He chirps in steady rhythm, as if rehearsing lines for an upcoming performance. If this cricket had access to satin robes and a mirror, he'd probably be rehearsing dramatic monologues too. You rise to begin your morning duties. First, clean the pots. Second, check on the fighters. Third, make sure none of the royal cats have slipped into the garden again. Last time that happened, it resulted in a diplomatic crisis between the Empress Dowager and a very startled tabby. The cat survived. The eunuch guarding the door transferred to weather duty in Mongolia. You lift the first lid. The inside of the pot is faintly warm from the cricket's body heat. The cricket blinks at you again, which, as you now know, is still not biologically accurate, but emotionally very real. You offer it a drop of water from a special tiny ladle shaped like a lotus petal. It drinks like a diva, cautiously, with flair. Here's a historical fact that rarely makes it into textbooks. In the late Ming period, entire manuals were written on how to care for crickets. These guides included notes on diet, temperature, temperament, and even spiritual alignment. One guide, written by a particularly poetic scholar named Gia Sido, insisted that crickets sing best when placed near flowering plum trees. Another warned against feeding them watermelon, claiming it makes them too moist in spirit. Interpret that as you will. You walk along the gravel path that splits the garden in two. On your left are the singers, the prized crickets whose songs soothe the emperor into slumber or inspire his morning meditations. On your right, the fighters, tough little gladiators kept in bamboo cages no bigger than a teacup. Cricket fighting is not your favorite task, but it is undeniably popular. The emperor, despite his robe-draped serenity, enjoys a good match now and then. And while the bugs rarely harm one another, there's a certain drama in watching two insects puff up and dance around like overly caffeinated nobles at a poetry reading. You pause by one of the fighter cages. Inside, a cricket named Iron Radish is stretching. He's broad-shouldered for his species, though again, that's more of a poetic observation than a scientific one. You sprinkle a touch of powdered peanut into his feeding bowl. It's supposed to give energy. Or at least, that's what the kitchen boy says. He also once claimed crickets enjoy opera. Historians still debate whether the royal court truly took these contests seriously, or if it was all just another layer of ritualized boredom, wrapped in ceramic pots and poetic metaphors. Your footsteps crunch softly over pebbled stone as you make your way to the small pagoda at the garden's edge. This was built not for people, but as a listening station, a shaded pavilion where the emperor might sit, cup of chrysanthemum tea in hand, and judge the sounds of his crickets as though attending an exclusive concert of six-legged musicians. You sit beneath the structure now, letting your gaze wander across the carefully arranged landscape. It's all so meticulously balanced. Potted moss in perfect quadrants, lattice fences separating the tenor crickets from the baritones, and even a tiny path lined with polished stones said to vibrate differently depending on the pitch of nearby chirps. Is it true? No one's entirely sure, but it makes for excellent palace gossip. You pull from your robe a scroll, not one of the emperor's orders, or a record of cricket genealogy. Yes, that exists too. But a simple poem written by a bored court scribe. They sing of nothing, but they sing it well. Born to be brief, yet treated like kings. In a palace too grand for the gods, the smallest voice still rules the night. You're not sure if it's about the crickets or the emperor. probably both. A palace maid appears in the distance, carrying a tray of sweet tea and pickled plums. She nods toward you, but doesn't speak. Words aren't really necessary this early in the day, especially not in a place where bugs are poets and gardeners are philosophers. As the sun rises higher, light glints off the glazed pots, turning the cricket garden into a mosaic of sound and shadow. You hear the court musicians begin their rehearsal in a nearby hall, distant notes of guqin and flute filtering through the corridor like someone left a music box open too long. The crickets, undeterred, continue their own concert, layered and imperfect, and oddly lovely. And for a moment, you wonder what it might be like if all music was this quiet, this unpredictable, this unbothered by tempo or fame. Then, Iron Radish lets out a loud chirp and flips over in his pot, legs flailing in what might be protest, performance, or a particularly aggressive stretch. You shake your head. It's going to be another long, slow day in the world's tiniest amphitheater. And somewhere, just beyond the garden, the Emperor is waking up, probably to Plum Wine's smug serenade, and thinking to himself, "Ah, yes, harmony, midday in the Forbidden City, does not arrive with a bang. It drifts in like steam from a distant soup pot, warm, slow, and a little sleepy around the edges. The shadows stretch, the cicadas trade complaints with the crickets, and the palace seems to collectively sigh. You, of course, are still with the bugs. Your knees crack slightly as you stand. It's not exactly the most glorious sound in a garden dedicated to delicate music. But the crickets don't seem offended. They keep chirping, unwavering in their tiny devotion to the imperial vibe. You carry a fresh stack of lacquered cricket pots, newly cleaned and air-dried in the sun, each painted with delicate floral designs that no one will ever see once the lids are on. That's the thing about Ming Dynasty aesthetics. Everything must be beautiful, even if it's going to live in the dark with a bug. You stop beside a bench carved from ginkgo wood and set down the pots. Beside you, a young assistant, new, nervous, and visibly sweating despite the cool shade, tries to ask whether crickets prefer silence while eating. You respond solemnly, "Only if it's beetroot," then walk away without explaining. This is your one luxury, baffling the interns. Today's most pressing task is a ceremonial cleaning of the Emperor's top-tier cricket cages. These are not your average bug jars. No, these are cricket mansions, delicate lattice domes made of bone, ivory, or carved bamboo, with inlaid gemstone vents and silk thread handles. One even has a miniature koi pond painted inside, just in case the cricket is feeling contemplative. You begin with the Emperor's travel cage, a compact, jade-handled case with golden hinges so tiny you wonder if they required monk-level patience to attach. Inside, Plum Wine is napping, or brooding, or doing whatever passes for emotional processing in a cricket. You slide open the compartment and whisper, "It's laundry day, my lord." Plum Wine does not respond. Here's something curious. Elite cricket keepers in imperial China often developed genuine emotional bonds with their insects. They wrote poems, sang songs, even mourned them with tiny funeral rites involving incense, silk, and one time, a jade burial charm. It's unclear whether this was affection, obsession, or just what happens when you work with bugs in absolute silence for too long. Historians still debate whether the cricket craze of the Ming court was driven by sincere reverence or an emperor's desperate need to avoid paperwork. Likely a bit of both. As you clean the tiny cage with a brush made of horsehair and wishful thinking, you hear a distant gong echo 3 times. It signals lunch, which in your case means a porcelain bowl of tepid soup and half a scallion bun someone forgot to serve the eunuchs. You eat beside the garden, elbows on your knees, watching a cricket peck at a melon seed with the intensity of a tax collector. Between bites, you glance at a nearby scroll someone left out in the sun. It's a manual, yes, another one, on proper cricket training techniques. According to this author, whose name has been smudged beyond legibility, crickets respond well to music played on the pipa, provided it's in a minor key. Another section insists that chanting poetry written during the Jin dynasty increases their chirping speed by up to 30%. You raise an eyebrow. Somewhere, a scholar definitely got paid for that. You head to the shaded edge of the garden, where the training rings are. These are not arenas, per se, more like meditation dojos for bugs. Each one is a shallow clay dish, about the size of a dumpling plate, with polished walls to prevent escape and a single white feather used for encouragement. There's even a tiny mallet used to drum the floor and awaken the fighting spirit. Iron Radish is already pacing his training circle. You give him a gentle nudge with the feather. He does a half spin and waves his legs in defiance. It's either aggression or interpretive dance. Either way, he's ready. Cricket fighting was, and still is in some places, considered a legitimate sport. In Ming China, it was even wagered upon, though not officially. People bet ginseng roots, tea bricks, or, in one scandalous case, a concubine's hair comb. The emperor never bet publicly, but rumor has it he once lost his jade snuff bottle after plum wine lost a match. The story was swiftly denied. The bottle was never seen again. The sun shifts slightly overhead, casting long lines across the garden's stone paths. You feel its warmth on your back as you sit and observe. The crickets are louder now, their chorus buzzing in waves. It's not chaotic, it's conversational. Some chirps are sharp and declarative. Others are low and hesitant. A few are just vibing. You close your eyes for a moment, letting the sound fold around you like layers of thin fabric. The garden smells of earth and old wood and something faintly sweet. Perhaps the remnants of a plum tart someone smuggled into the kitchens last night. When you open your eyes, a breeze has rolled in, rustling the painted leaves on the pots, making the bamboo fence creak softly. Everything here is soft. Even time. You rise gently now and begin rotating the pots so no cricket becomes too accustomed to one direction. The emperor insists it helps their inner balance. Whether he's quoting Taoist wisdom or inventing palace yoga for bugs is unclear. Before you leave the ring, Iron Radish gives one final chirp, like a trumpet signaling the end of rehearsal. You bow slightly, because respect goes both ways in the garden of miniature emperors. You begin making your way back toward the pagoda. Remember that tiny stone path lined with vibration-sensitive pebbles? It's back. And today, it's humming softly under your feet, as if responding to the crescendo of the chirping orchestra you've helped tune. You smile, just slightly. Maybe there's something to all this after all. Afternoon in the Forbidden City slips in like a well-mannered guest, neither loud nor invisible, just politely present. The air turns warm and slightly syrupy, like steamed rice pudding forgotten on a windowsill. The crickets, sensing the shift in light, begin their second act of the day. You, naturally, are still here, tending to the most pampered insects in history. You make your way toward the Eastern Shade Pavilion, carrying a delicate, lacquered tray holding 3 of the emperor's prized singers. Each jar is topped with a silk-draped lid, tied loosely with red string. The colors mean something. Red for performers, blue for fighters, and gold if the cricket once chirped during a lunar eclipse. That last one was pure luck, but it's treated as divine appointment. As you walk, a pair of palace scribes shuffle past, deep in a quiet argument over whether one cricket's chirp resembles jade wind over mountain snow or pine needles caught in sorrow. You resist the urge to tell them it mostly just sounds like a cricket. Let them have their poetry. You have bugs to feed. You place the 3 pots on the stone table beneath the pavilion. The table itself is carved with swirling clouds and tiny peach blossoms, probably unnoticed by most. But here, everything is a stage. You lift one lid gently. The cricket inside blinks, again, metaphorically, then chirps once, then again. Perfect thirds, spaced like they were composed. Nice, you whisper. You mark a check in your logbook with a brush no thicker than a pine needle. Performance, satisfactory. Attitude, noble. Preferred meal, shredded cucumber, slightly salted. And here's your fact for the day. Emperor Xuan of the Ming Dynasty reigned 1425 to 1435, was known to personally breed and train crickets. He reportedly kept a log of each one's diet, sleep habits, and emotional inclinations. He also painted their portraits. Historians aren't entirely sure whether this was artistic devotion or what happens when absolute power meets unlimited leisure. A breeze moves through the pavilion, lifting the silk curtains just enough to reveal a stretch of the outer palace. Far beyond this garden lies a city of whispers. Ministers in stiff hats discussing taxes, concubines drifting through perfumed corridors, servants polishing floors that will never be dirty. But here, in this corner of crickets, time behaves differently. You walk past the shelf where empty cricket jars wait for their next resident. Each one is unique. Some are shaped like gourds. Others are painted with birds or waves. One has a quote etched around the rim. The smallest voice echoes deepest in silence. You don't know who wrote it, but someone definitely got promoted after saying it in the emperor's hearing. You return to the garden path, pausing to observe a young assistant carefully replacing the moss bedding in each cricket jar. He's doing a good job, slow, focused, reverent. That is, until a cricket hops onto his sleeve and he screams like it's a venomous snake. "Ah," you say calmly. You've met Emperor Fang. The assistant gulps. He jumped. Yes, he does that. Often. Probably out of existential dread. You retrieve the tiny creature from the assistant's sleeve and return it to its jar. Emperor Fang, true to form, chirps 3 times in what you swear sounds like triumph. Crickets in imperial China weren't just pets or fighters. They were also omens. Their songs were thought to reflect harmony in the empire. If the crickets stopped singing, people got nervous. Once, when the palace crickets went silent during an eclipse, ministers proposed an emergency offering to the river god. The real problem? Someone had accidentally overwatered their moss. Scholars continue to argue whether the cricket silence was symbolic or just humidity related. The sun has begun its descent now, tilting the shadows sideways. The garden looks different in this light. Longer, older, like a memory trying to retell itself. You find a seat on the curved stone bench beneath the wisteria, which has started to shed its petals like purple confetti. A few drift into one of the jars. The cricket inside doesn't mind. If anything, he seems to chirp louder. You pull out your afternoon log and begin your daily entries. Let's see. Iron radish, sparred with energy. Attempted escape, chirped at nothing for 3 minutes. Mood, defiant. Plum wine, sang with elegance, refused rice flake, maybe bored. Quiet thunder, still silent, beginning to suspect personal vendetta. You pause and scribble a doodle of a tiny crown next to Plum Wine's name. He's earned it. The air begins to cool. Somewhere in the distance, you hear a bell ring 5 times, signaling the start of poetry hour in the northern hall. You imagine a group of old scholars sighing dramatically while arguing over metaphor placement. Meanwhile, you're watching a cricket eat a fragment of dried mushroom like it holds the secrets of the universe. And maybe, just maybe, it does. Insects don't ask for much. A bit of warmth, a quiet place, something soft to sleep on. And yet, here they are, with full-time caretakers, gilded jars, private concerts, and reputations that stretch into legend. You lean back, hands behind your head, eyes squinting up at the slowly paling sky. A group of swallows loops above the roof tiles. The scent of pine resin drifts in from somewhere unseen. One of the jars rattles slightly. You glance over. It's Emperor Fang again. He chirps, once, loud, defiant, unapologetic. And in that tiny sound, you swear you hear a declaration. I am here. I matter. feed me again. You nod slowly. Soon, you whisper. Dinner's at dusk. Dusk settles over the forbidden city, like a gentle sigh, softening the edges of the world. The sky fades from the warm glow of day to a muted canvas of indigo and lavender, flecked with the first shy stars. The palace begins to slow its endless hum, as if sighing in relief after another day of ritual and waiting. You find yourself back in the cricket garden, where twilight transforms every leaf and stone into something slightly magical. The air is cooler now, tinged with the scent of jasmine and old parchment. Somewhere nearby, a water clock ticks quietly, an ancient reminder that time, even in this suspended world, continues to inch forward. You breathe it in, deep and slow, feeling the tension leave your shoulders like steam from a forgotten kettle. Tonight, your main task is the feeding ritual, a delicate ceremony that the emperor himself considers essential to maintaining the cricket's spiritual balance, which, frankly, sounds like a polite way of saying, "Don't starve the little divas." You gather an assortment of delicacies: finely chopped mulberry leaves, grains of polished rice, thin slices of bamboo shoot, and something exotic called honeydew, a sticky sap said to coax the most melodic chirps. You lay out each morsel on tiny ceramic dishes, arranged with the precision of a bonsai. As you move from pot to pot, you can't help but notice how serious the crickets seem tonight. Plum wine, your perennial favorite, chirps softly, a tune that feels like a lullaby whispered on the wind. Iron Radish, still the stubborn fighter, waves his legs in impatience, clearly more interested in sparring than dining. Here's a curious historical fact for your evening. During the Qing dynasty, cricket keepers often trained their insects to chirp in sync with the emperor's favorite poems, effectively turning the bugs into a live soundtrack for recitations. Some accounts even mention crickets performing concerts on imperial command. Whether this was true performance art or a particularly elaborate game of chance, historians still debate. You delicately sprinkle a bit of honeydew near Plumwine's pot. The cricket immediately leans in, antennae twitching as if savoring a secret banquet. You imagine, with a smile, what a royal feast this must seem to such a tiny creature, a miniature banquet worthy of its own palace intrigue. Nearby, a shadow flickers. You glance up to see the palace cat sneaking through the bamboo fence again, eyes gleaming with mischief and the confidence of a seasoned troublemaker. You gently shoo the feline away, silently warning it that cricket gardens are not playgrounds for predators. The cat gives you a look that clearly says, "I run this place. Good luck." You chuckle softly and return to your duties. Feeding complete, you settle into the pagoda again, the fading light casting gentle patterns through the latticework. The cricket's chorus grows louder as night fully descends, a layered hum that feels like the breath of the garden itself. You lean back, feeling the cool stone beneath you, and let your mind wander. It's strange, isn't it, to find such complexity in something so small, to realize that these insects, chirping quietly in their ornate pots, carried the weight of imperial dreams, artistic whims, and philosophical musings. Their lives were tiny echoes of a world vast and intricate, where emperors sought harmony not just in politics or poetry, but in the delicate music of a cricket's song. You trace your fingers over the smooth wood of the bench, letting your thoughts drift like petals on a slow stream. Somewhere deep inside, you understand why the emperor found solace here. In these small moments, the world slows and the noise falls away. The crickets do not care for power or conquest. Their concerns are simpler, yet somehow more profound. Before you leave, you write one last note in your journal for the day. Crickets remind us that beauty often lives in the quiet corners. In their songs, a reminder. Even the smallest voices can shape the vastest palaces. As you rise to depart, a final chirp rings out. Sharp, clear, and undeniably proud. Plum wine, it seems, has one more serenade for the night. You smile, knowing tomorrow will bring the same slow dance of care and contemplation. And with that, you step away, letting the garden's gentle symphony fade into the calm embrace of night. Night settles like a soft blanket over the forbidden city, wrapping the ancient walls in quiet darkness, where the only light comes from flickering lanterns and the occasional glimmer of a distant star. The air is cool now, carrying the faint scent of magnolia and damp earth, a subtle perfume that feels both familiar and distant, like a forgotten dream. You find yourself once again in the cricket garden, the heart of this nocturnal world, where the tiny emperors sing their evening songs with a renewed vigor. The shadows dance gently among the leaves, and the rustle of bamboo whispers a lullaby only the night understands. Your footsteps are soft on the stone path as you approach the main pavilion, where the emperor's personal cricket collection rests. Each jar gleams faintly in the lantern light, like little lanterns themselves, each housing a delicate life vibrating with energy and mystery. Tonight, your job is a quiet one, checking on the crickets' health and ensuring their habitats are just right for a long, restful night. You lift the lid of Plum Wine's jar and watch as the cricket greets you with a gentle chirp, like an old friend saying good evening. You smile and whisper, "Sleep well, my lord." There's a strange comfort in these small rituals, this delicate dance of care and attention. It reminds you of how even in the grandest courts, the smallest creatures can hold a place of honor. And perhaps in their simple songs, there's a wisdom we often overlook, a reminder to slow down, to listen, and to find peace in the quiet moments. You move from jar to jar, adjusting moss beds, checking water droplets, and occasionally speaking softly to your tiny charges. The night is full of these whispered conversations, where human and insect meet in a shared space of stillness. Here's a curious note for the night. Some emperors believed that the chirping of crickets was a direct connection to the spirit world, a way for ancestors to send messages wrapped in melody. In certain rituals, the emperor would hold a cricket dialogue, listening intently for the answers to questions too delicate for words. Whether these dialogues ever resolved imperial dilemmas is a mystery lost to time. Historians still debate the true significance of these rituals. Were they profound spiritual practices, or simply an emperor's pastime to escape the weight of his crown? The answer may be as elusive as a cricket's song fading into the night. As the moon rises higher, casting silver light over the garden, you take a moment to sit quietly, letting the sounds envelop you. The crickets chirp in gentle waves, a natural symphony that soothes the restless mind and invites sleep. You close your eyes, imagining the gardens as they were centuries ago, full of life, secrets, and the quiet power of nature's smallest voices. The palace fades away, leaving only the music and the night. In this peaceful moment, you feel a connection to a world both ancient and timeless. A reminder that sometimes the most profound histories are told not through grand battles or sweeping conquests, but through the soft chirping of a cricket in a garden made just for them. And now, as your eyelids grow heavy and the garden's song carries you toward rest, know that the story continues, quiet, patient, and endlessly unfolding beneath the stars. Good night.